What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show. Me, Sean Sheehan, here on Sherdog.com, and I am back with my top bets for the week in the world of mixed martial arts. And we have two big cards coming up this weekend with the PFL and the UFC. There's a pretty big card as well from Octagon coming up. There's two Cage Warriors cards, and I'll touch on them at the end. But I'm going to start off with my PFL bets, and then give you my UFC bets, and then we will have a recap at the end. Before I start, let me know in the comment section below your best bet for the week. Let me know who you're betting on this week. Please give it a like and a subscribe if you enjoyed the show as well. And any other comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Before we get to next week, as always, let's look back at last week, and a reminder as well to please bet responsibly whenever you're thinking about betting or talking about betting. So last week we had a pretty good run. We hit 3 from 4. Our flyer didn't hit, so the flyer was Kuniev by a KO. That's plus 600. I thought in the second round of that fight, I thought we were quids in there, to be honest. It was looking really good, and in the end, he ended up losing the fight. I thought he won the fight, and it was a split decision on Ben Cartledge had him winning. I tend to lean on Ben's expertise for these, although the other two judges were good judges as well. So it was a close fight, but I did think Kuniev won anyway. Our bet wouldn't have won anyway because it was via knockout. But then 3 of the other 4 hit. The one that didn't hit was Mando Gutierrez. Bit of a weird fight, that one, with Justin Wetzel. Two good kickboxers, and it turned into a bit of a wrestling match, so that was a bit odd. Alfie Davis won then against Bryn Primus. A good win for him there, plus 170, so that was a pretty good price. Then we Killian Roundtree at minus 125. I think after the way that fight went, if you were to do the odds in that fight again, you're probably looking at closer to minus 500 than minus 125, so that's a great bet. And in the Fiziev Bahamundes fight to go to decision at minus 143, again, pretty good bet. That was one of those fights, like, it was all, I think you could be fooled into thinking that was a good technical fight. I wasn't a big fan of it. There was too much switching of stances and too much of very little happening on a card where very little happened altogether. So, not the best fight, but a good bet. So we hit 3-4. Overall now, we're 49 bets correct out of 94, which is pretty good percentage, over the 50%, and still only 2 flyers hit. But we hit one 2 weeks ago with Usman to win by decision. So hopefully we hit another one this week. So let's see on that. Right. Let's start off with the PFL, and the first bet I'm going for here in the PFL 7 cards. I'm going for a fight that's a showcase fight, and outside of the season, I'm going for Sergio Pettis to win his fight over Rafian Stotts at plus 200. And I'll be honest, the reason I'm going for this is the plus 200. I'm relatively torn on who I think will win. I saw this price coming out the other day, and I thought, well, that price is going to get snapped up on Sunday. What are we, 2 or 3 days later here? And the plus 200 is still there. Now, some places plus 175, other places plus 183, but still, you can get plus 200 on this as I sit here now. And I just think that is, honestly, that's just a bit too good to turn down for this fight. I think, like, if you were to look back at this fight, or if you were to talk about this fight, let's say 2 years ago, and who you think would win, and what way do you think it would go down, it would be an easier fight, I think, to talk about. Whether we can agree or disagree who will win and who will lose. But now the fact that neither of these two guys have been fighting all that often over the last couple of years, I think it makes it a little bit tougher. Plus the fact that, like, you look at Stotts, he's now 36 years of age. He'll be 37 this year. Sergio Pettis, it's not that he's old, that he's only 31 years of age, but he's 30 fights into his career. He's only fought once in the last 2.5 years. His last 2 fights were losses, Horiguchi and Mix, and obviously, the Horiguchi one via decision, and then the Mix one, a big loss of his title after that wonderful performance against Patricio Ferreira, which is exactly 2 years ago to the week nearly. So, like, where are both of these guys in their careers right now? is, I suppose, the question you'd ask yourself coming in here. And I suppose that's why there is a bit of risk behind this bet, and why I would, again, if I had looked at this, I said, what did I say 18 months ago? It's probably better 3 or 4 years ago. If I'd looked at this bet and saw plus 200, I'd be much more assured at which way I was looking, whichever way it was. But having said that, we've had a lot of fights recently where lads, and it's not like these lads have been out of action forever. Stotts, in fact, he fought like 9 months ago, wasn't it? And Pettis fought just about a year ago as well. But like for both of them, that was their only fight in a good period of time before that. Between Stotts' last fight and the fight before that was 11 months, and for Pettis it was. So it's a year since his last fight, and then it was another 7-8 months before that fight. So, you know what I'm getting at there. I think Stotts is a guy who is a well-rounded fighter in like the modern sense of the word, in that sometimes he can wrestle, sometimes he's going to strike. He's good in the scrambles. He's won't be beat easily anywhere. And I think Sergio Pettis is almost like well-rounded in the older sense of it, in that he's a very good technical striker and he can do everything else in the game, but that's his MO. He's a well-rounded guy with a clear vision, I think. And vision is the wrong word, but like a clear I suppose A1 game plan, if you want to put it that way. Now, you could say the same for the stats per fight, but I think in different fights he fights different ways, and sometimes that's forced upon him, especially when you're fighting guys like Danny Sabatella or Apache Mix. I think a big difference here is when you look at the amount of decisions that both of these lads go to, right? So Stotts has had 21 wins, 12 have gone to a decision. Pettis 23 wins, 15 have gone to a decision. He's also had 4 losses going to a decision on 19 fights of his 30-fight career. That's a pretty high percentage. He's 15-4 in decisions, 12-0 in decisions is Stotts. But at the same time, I feel like the decisions that Pettis has lost, Haraguchi, Font in the UFC, Formiga in the UFC, and Henry Cejudo, they're all pretty high-level opponents. My thing is, I think Pettis will win by decision. I think he will have the ability to control the fight better on the feet than most people that Stotts comes up against will. And I think it'll be easier at 31 years of age as well to kind of pop back into your best than maybe it will be for Stotts at 36 years of age. Like I don't mean, or I don't think Stotts will have fallen off a cliff or anything like that. But like, you could look at Pettis and go, oh, maybe there's still a bit of improvement there, or maybe he's still at the top of his game. Like for Stotts, I think this is kind of the time where maybe it's not necessarily the beginning of the end, but he's not going to be, he's not the guy at the top of his game anymore. Now, okay, Pettis isn't either, but I think he's probably closer to it in terms of age. It's an obvious thing to say than Stotts is, but I think he's closer to recapturing his best maybe than Stotts is. And if he does, I think his best is better than Stotts' best. Now, that's all very much speculation for me, but the other side of it is, I think what he did in that Patricio fight, Pettis, is something that if he can produce again, I don't think Stotts can live with, right? And I don't think Stotts can change it up well enough to kind of wrestle him, to take him down, to beat him in that fashion. Now, maybe he can, and maybe I'll be proven wrong. But I think this is going to be a relatively close fight on the feet. I think it's going to be a technical fight, and Pettis' ability to win technical fights is pretty high level. So I think he will win it. And, that plus 200 price is driving me even further there. So, first bet of the week, plus 200, Sergio Pettis. Second bet of the week, also from over on the PFL from the tournament, is going to be in the middleweight division. It's going to be Dalton Rosta in his fight with Aaron Jeffrey, and his price is minus 113. Now, this price has moved over the last few days. he started off, I'm looking at here, is plus 104. And I believe, I'll just check here now. Yes, he was a favorite. Jeffrey opened up at minus 132. Now, I see some places here, Rosta's minus 120 as well. Like, even at that price, I'll take him, but I still see the price is here at the moment at minus 113. So that's the price we will take him at. People might say, Shawnee, they fought before, not too long ago, August of 23, and Aaron Jeffrey won. What's the difference going to be between then and now? Well, the difference is I went back and I watched that fight this week, and it's not the sort of fight that you can take a whole load from, to be honest, because what the fight was basically was Dalton Rosta attempting to take Aaron Jeffrey down, failing, and just Jeffrey leaning on him in like the almost, not necessarily the right position, but like a sprawl position for long periods of the fight, and throwing a couple of elbows and landing a few shots from there. It was not a fight of any great endeavor or consequence or entertainment. Now, I do think this fight will be a lot different. I think this will be, it couldn't be a worse fight than the last one, but the big difference, I think, in this fight between the last fight, I think Aaron Jeffrey is basically the same fighter, a really game guy at 32 years of age, and he's 21 fights into his career. He's been in there with some great guys. Last time out, he beat Murad Ramazanov, who's been a really good fighter around the world for the last few years. He's been in there with Fabian Edwards, and Austin Vanford beat him, and Koba Alio, John Salter. Many good fighters, and he's held his own against a lot of those lads and won some of those fights as well. So I think what kind of fighter is Aaron Jeffrey? He's a well-rounded fighter. He's well able to wrestle. He's well able to take a shellacking and come back and push you back. He's like, his best attribute is his ability to kind of push you back and just take it from you. And I think Dalton Rosta has kind of become that sort of fighter as well. Like, he kind of did to Aaron Jeffrey what Aaron Jeffrey normally does. Now, not necessarily in their fight, but he did that against Norbert Navinia Jr. He kind of took his soul in that fight type of thing. And I really like Norbert Navinia Jr. I think he's still one of the best prospects in the sport. Went in there and choked out Sadabusi in the second round in this year. And I think he's turned the corner. I think his striking is better. I don't think he'll be as one-dimensional with his takedowns this time as he was in that fight. And that's also a fight you learn a lot from. You look at that and go, I can't enter this way. I can't do this, and this. And I have to change all of those things as well. Aaron Jeffrey, I think, is the type of lad that if you fight him twice, if you fight him once, it's very, very difficult. If you fight him twice, you might be able to get more of an idea of what he's going to do. I also think there's more scope in Rosta's game to change up what he does compared to Jeffrey. Now, to be fair to both of them, neither of them really did what they can do in that first fight, because it was so much of a stalemate for so much of the fight. But I just think Rosta can turn it around. I think he is the guy with the higher ceiling. I think he's a really talented guy, and that was an upset I would garner on the betting the first time, and I would be surprised if the same thing happened again. Also, he has that in his back pocket now, in the back of his mind, that this guy already beat me. What great motivation to get. You not only get to beat a guy who already beat you, you get to go to the finale for the $500,000 for all that money and the belt and the whole lot, and you might be fighting against Johnny Eblen, whoever it might be, for another big money fight. So there's a lot on the line here in terms of Rosta, but there's a lot of motivation for him as well, and I think that'll help him. I think the wrestling will be better this time. I don't think it could be worse. I think the striking will be better, and I think he'll win at minus 113. The other bet I'm going for is that this might be a bit of an unusual bet. Now, maybe a flight flying under the radar, but two guys I've seen an awful lot of. I'm going to go for Karl Albrektsson at plus 110 in his fight with Rafael Xavier. And this price, he's plus 106 in other places. He's just about even money as well in some other places. But Rafael Xavier is the favorite here. And I'll be honest, I was a bit surprised when I saw Xavier was the favorite. Like, Xavier's a good fighter, good on the feet, technical, has a bit of knockout power, but like his record is 13-8, and if you look at the guys he's been in there with, like all the names in his records are the ones that have kind of beaten him, I suppose. You know, even back to Artem Frolov a few years ago, Pavel Langer over an octagon, Simeon Powell here in Bellator in the fight in London last year. You know, lost all of those fights, and you know the ones he won are against opponents maybe that wouldn't stick out to you. Albrektsson on the other side of, you know, not too dissimilar record, 14-7. And again, look, he's been in there with some good guys and lost to most of them, but he has beaten Dalton Rosta in 2021. That's not that long ago. Rosta is a very, very good fighter. That fight went to a decision, you know. And like he's been in there with Yuri Prochazka. He's been in there with Valentin Moldavsky. He's beaten Vadim Nimkov as well. Now that was a good few years ago, but you know, went to a decision with Grant Neal. That fight against Karl Moore was fairly close, you know, and again, he has lost a good few of those fights, don't get me wrong. But I think this is going to be a kickboxing match. And I think it's probably going to be a longer sort of fight. And it might be the guy who can kind of bank the first 2 rounds might win. And I think there's a good chance Albrektsson does that. Like I think he's a fast enough starter. A lot of the times, you know, when he ends up losing, it's like, and I'm even looking at it here, he got finished in the second round by Moore, Campbell, and Powell, and then Grant Neal obviously went to a decision, and it was a split decision, a relatively close fight as well. So like he's not losing any of these fights early, and against Xavier, you know, who's a good fighter and has a knockout in his arsenal. Like, does he have the ability to knock out someone like Albrektsson, who is, you know, okay, he's not the upper echelon of fighters, but he's probably on a level just below them. And the fact that he's fought so many of them makes it tough for him to, I suppose, show that level. But I don't think Xavier's on that level either. Like, so I think if this turns into a technical matchup, I fancy Albrektsson to, as I said, bank a few rounds. I don't know if Xavier will finish him at 34 years of age as well. You know, I've talked to a few people who trained with Xavier, and they say to me like he's a good fighter, but he's not maybe the level that the light heavyweights in the PFL at the moment are at. So, you know, I take that into account as well. I'm going for Karl Albrektsson. I think he'll probably win a decision. But if not, anyway, we have him straight up at a plus 110. So there you go. Right. While we're on the PFL, let's run through the rest of the prices. Fabian Edwards and Josh Silveira is a real blow-away here. Minus 530 for Edwards. Silveira is plus 320-ish. Plus, actually, best price plus 360, which is very, very interesting. I think that is you know, that is the type of fight, I think, that Fabian Edwards will either show up, let his hands go, and destroy Joshua Silveira, like he did in the second round against Iba Kasanganay, or it's a fight that will kind of go 3 rounds and maybe it'll be closer than we think. Either way, I do think Fabian Edwards will win it. So I you know, no one's going to be backing at minus 530, but I do like Edwards. Again, the Phil Davis Sullivan Colley one, if you haven't seen the previous show, I talked about all these fights in it as well. You know, Sullivan Colley's best price plus 200 there. I just wonder, will the control of Phil Davis and how good he was the last time, if he comes out and he fights like that again, it'd be very hard to pick against Phil Davis. Probably wouldn't be betting on that one, but, you know, if you'd asked me before the tournament started at these prices, I probably would have said Colley, but that performance from Phil Davis last time out, maybe I would lean Davis. Then we've Antonio Carlos Jr. against Simeon Powell, very close in terms of the betting, you know, minus 138 best price for Powell, plus 122 best price for Jr., but he's plus 105 in a couple of places as well. Again, you know, I linked Powell on the preview show, probably just going to lean Powell here again, but again, that's another one I'd probably avoid. The betting on Baggio Ali Walsh is a massive favourite, minus 1200. Moldavsky is the favourite, -172 plus 134 for Romanov. I do like Moldavsky. Again, very close in the betting, but I'd probably lean him there. I'd probably lean Popov as well at -200 plus 164 for Nascimento. And we've spoken about the rest of the fights then. So that is that's all from the PFL.